we had a disagreement over Romans 13, um, because they were saying, well, Romans 13 says that we have to submit to the government for whatever they say.
Mm.
And I'm like, have you read it? Because that's not at all what it says. All Romans 13 is saying is Paul is laying out the what God ordained authority is for. And it's very clear. God ordained authority is to punish evil and reward good. And it's not, when it comes to the government, the person is not the authority. There's an authority behind that position. So, for instance, in the federal government, what is the authority? Is the president, is the Congress, is the judiciary, or is it something else? And of course, you're a history major, right? The authority is the Constitution, not the person.
Hey guys, welcome to the Troy Gramling podcast. As always, I say it every single time, it is an honor to get to hang out with you. It is our hope and desire just to connect and build a sense of community. I believe with all my heart that God intentionally created you on purpose to do something of significance. You were created with great potential. And so we just want to introduce you to some great folks, some ideas, maybe some thoughts, concepts, principles that can help you reach your potential and succeed at what you've been called and gifted uniquely to do. And today I'm pretty excited. I get to talk with someone I haven't talked to really, goodness, I can't remember. It's been a lot of years, but played basketball with this gentleman over the years and got to watch him and his wife and the start of his family years and years ago at a couple of different places, actually. And then anxious to hear all the great things that have happened. So let's welcome Dr. Steven Spurling. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Troy. It's man, it's really exciting to get to see you face to face. I mean, I sometimes watch your videos, but I don't get to talk to you very often. I think it's been probably over 20 years.
It's been, wow. It's been a while. And I was saying earlier, you look the same. I mean, you got gray hair, but you look the same. You look really great, man, for that long.
Well, it's what healthy living does for you.
You still play basketball?
I haven't touched a basketball hardly in probably 15 years. I would love to get out on the court again, but there's just nowhere around here to play unless you pay for it. And you can't play outside because the wind's always blowing about 20 miles an hour. So,
I don't know if that'd affect your shot that much.
Hey. Hey, you don't remember, I was the second highest field goal percentage our freshman year in our conference. So they were mostly layups, but
that did slip my mind. From Blytheville, Arkansas. Oh no, Gosnell.
No, yeah.
Wow.
Oh, Gosnell.
I'm sure the folks listening have no idea where Blytheville or Gosnell is, but
probably correct. Yeah.
Anyway, so now tell us, you are living where and doing what?
Well, I'm in the hometown of Buddy Holly in West Texas, in Lubbock, Texas. So been here about 15 years, and as the head, the teaching pastor, basically. And so, just trying to teach the word of God to God's people.
So 15 years, did you say?
15.
How big is Lubbock?
I don't keep up with it. If my daughter were here, she could tell you exact number. It's over 200,000, I think.
Okay, so it's a medium-sized city.
Yeah, it has really exploded since we've been here. I mean, they're building on every square inch of the place now. So
is it young, a lot of young people or more senior adults or?
Well, it's a lot of young people moving in. And to be honest with you, I'm really not sure what they do. I mean, the biggest industries that I know of around here is the hospital and the 3 universities that we have. So Other than that, I don't know.
Maybe they're all going to school.
That's possible. Yeah.
So tell me now, you said teaching pastor. What's the difference between teaching pastor, pastor, senior pastor? Um, is it just a terminology or do you fulfill
Yeah.
a different role?
I think it's mostly terminology. I was actually looking at our Constitution and bylaws the other day, and my official title is actually the senior pastor.
Mm.
Uh, but the other guys are more senior than I am, so I'm the young one. And but so I was always refer to myself as a teaching pastor because we've always had a gentleman who was an accountant and a business owner who's always taking care of the financials and the administrative stuff, and then the other elders take care of some other things. But my main responsibility has always been just teaching.
Oh, okay. Now, what's your doctorate in?
Doctorate in theology.
Where did you get it?
Um, I got it through a joint effort with a school called Schofield Graduate School
Uh-huh.
and Trinity. Let's see if I can remember the name correctly because it's a long name. Trinity Graduate School of Apologetics and Theology.
Ah, okay. Now, I know your brother has a doctorate degree as well.
Yeah, Doc Spurling. Yeah.
Yeah, so I remember, calling him Doc years and years ago. So imagine the family is proud of your achievement.
I guess so. Yeah, my mom and dad say they're proud of me. I don't know what they say behind my back, but
Now, why did you pursue a doc? What was your motivation to go those extra years to get the doctorate?
Yeah, I'd be lying if I said it was all, holy and righteous. That some of it was just, some of it was obviously just pure self-satisfaction. But anyway, you know, Troy, for the first 10 years, I think, of our marriage, I really struggled. I jumped from job to job and just didn't know what I was supposed to do with my life. And so it kind of came to a head. We were living in Jonesboro, and I was working at a factory and doing part-time music and youth. And I just prayed, God, just what do I need to do with my life? And I just really had it impressed upon me um, from the time, when I was in eighth grade, Troy, is when I really wanted to become a pastor. But then I started chasing that orange ball around, and that kind of took precedent over everything in my life. And when that was gone, I didn't know what to do.
Mm.
And during that time, when I was just praying, said, Lord, just give me some direction. I just really got the impression that I needed to go back and get a theological education and become a Bible teacher, pastor. And
Yeah.
that's what I did.
Because I figure there's probably a lot of folks watching that go through that process of, trying to figure it out. That what am I supposed to do? I tried this, it didn't go well, or and so explain a little more when you say you felt led. What was that experience like? What was that journey like from not knowing to, the expense and the commitment? You don't just walk into a store and buy a doctorate. There's a lot of energy and effort involved in that.
Yeah. Honestly, Troy, Cheryl and I had gone to her mom and dad's house. Cheryl's dad was a pastor, and we went there one weekend. Cameron was still a baby, and they left me alone in the house one day, and I just sat in the recliner and I just prayed and I prayed and I was just so frustrated because I mean, my life was going nowhere, and I was taking my wife and daughter with me, and I don't know, I had been thinking about going back to school, and what I want to do as far as, do I want to continue trying to just do music, or do I want to, go back to that original desire to be a pastor? And it was just like a lightning bolt almost, I mean, metaphorically, it was just all of a sudden, it was just like a switch went off in my head. And it was like, this is what I'm supposed to do. And I should have been doing it all along.
Mm,
But, you can't go back. So let's start now.
mm,
And um, I knew I needed a mentor, somebody who could teach me how to teach me how to study the word for myself. And I just happened, it's one of those things I just happened to do, looking through a magazine and found this little school in Fort Worth, Texas. And the founder's name was Mal Couch, Dr. Mal Couch. And I just started taking classes under him and several professors from Dallas Theological Seminary, Dr. Robert Leitner, Dr. Stanley Toussaint, um, Charles Ryrie. I mean, big names in some circles, but and the Lord just led me to Tyndale, and actually, my mom helped me pay for it,
Mm,
and so um, it was a great experience,
wow.
uh, and I learned a lot. So, I learned the biblical languages and things so that I could, get behind the English text and all that, and so it just um, I would hate to think of where I would be had I not done it.
Well, you said that kind of made mention that where you, did you know that this is what you were supposed to be doing and didn't do it, or were afraid you had waited too long? What you had mentioned, what you should have been doing all along. So was there something inside of you that were like, that's, you should have been pursuing that and just weren't, or what was kind of going on there?
But yeah, it was just kind of like all of a sudden, you know, in my mind, I go back to that eighth grade
Mm,
experience and remembered that desire to be a pastor. And at that moment in time, it was just like that I understood that I should have been pursuing that
mm,
path all along. But, I mean, I was still, I was what, 30, or 29, 30, 31, somewhere in there when this happened.
right.
And so it wasn't too late. It was just my one of my major issues is always looking back and thinking what I should have done
Mm,
instead of, as Paul would say, setting all that stuff, laying it beside or laying it behind and pressing on. I too often will look back with regret of something I should have done, and that was a big one.
mm.
But at that time, I thought, it's not too late. I'm still a relatively young man, and I have an opportunity. I need to take that opportunity.
Because I think there's a lot of folks, that struggle with that,
Yeah,
and then they, then they feel guilty that they haven't pursued it, or they, um, for whatever reason, never actually do what they have always felt they're supposed to do.
yeah,
And so to me, that's, and like you say, 30's young, and no, especially, every year it gets younger.
yeah,
But it's far enough along that people can excuse, like you said, I got a family I got to take care of. I got a daughter. I mean, in other words, you could have come up with lots of reasons why not to pursue, something that was brand new in that sense, as far as not only getting the degree, but then ministry and that whole journey.
yeah. Well, you're never too young until you're dead.
Mm,
And it's one of the things I teach my people here. Our congregation is a bit older. People are retired. Some people are about to retire. And it's like, and I try to instill in them that your ministry's not done. As a matter of fact, you may transition, but you still have a lot of life left, Lord willing, and you have a lot of opportunity left to serve the family of God, to share the gospel with your neighbor or with coworkers or whatever. And so, it's not too late until, that last breath of life. I mean, I know people, I participated in a funeral of a lady that was one of my former elders' wives here at the church. And she was dying of cancer. And even in her cancer bed, as she was dying, she was still witnessing to the nurses that would come in contact with her. I mean, you hear things like that all the time. So, it's never too late to start.
mm,
Um, and if the Lord is in it, if it's something that God wants you to do, He's going to provide the way to do it. It doesn't mean it's going to be easy, but it does mean that He will provide.
yeah, that's good because people may not realize, but are gifted on the music side, and so you could have easily pursued that, knowing your giftedness, knowing you've got connections. You had like you said at the time you were partnering with the church and all of that, and yet you kind of go not in a totally different direction, but it's new relationships, new opportunities, that kind of thing. Now, were there times, even once you started this journey, where you second guessed yourself, or were you confident from the day you made that decision that, what, this is the right thing, this is my destiny, my purpose, this is what God's called me to do?
Yeah, I never doubted after that moment. Um, and so, yeah, I never doubted that that's what I was supposed to do. Um, it's funny you mentioned the music because that was one of the things that led me to this lowest point because I had moved to Nashville and was trying to pursue Christian music. And once again, just hit a brick wall. We moved back to Arkansas. Didn't stay very long, actually. And so once I made that decision and I really believed that God was in it, I never once doubted that that's what I was supposed to do.
Now, so how did because again, I'm sure there's some listeners that have been on a similar journey, and maybe a spouse or a girlfriend or boyfriend. And as you said, you had pursued many things in your lifetime. So how did you cast vision to Cheryl to say, this is it, this is really it? And, because, again, it's a change. It's going to take a total commitment of your whole family. How did you go about that, and what can we learn from that?
Well, honestly, Troy, like I said, Cheryl's dad was a pastor. And she had seen what a church could do to a pastor's wife. Uh, and when we first got together in college, she said, I'm not marrying a pastor. Yeah. But by the time I got to this decision, God had been working in her also. And it wasn't a big, yeah, rah rah moment where I had to convince her. It was kind of like our move here to Lubbock. God convinced
Mm,
her, maybe even before he convinced me.
mm.
And so when I said, this is what I'm going to do, she was like, yes, that's what you need to be doing. And so it was kind of more of a God thing than a Steve, convincing her type of thing. So if you know anything about Cheryl, it's one of those things where you can't make me, but you might be able to persuade me, you know. But God did the persuading in this instance. So
It's kind of like you were saying, when you get where positioned where God wants you to be. It doesn't mean everything's going to be easy, but it's like Proverbs 3 says, it all kind of lines up, or at least the next step that you're supposed to take.
yeah,
Let-
and another thing I would say is for people who might be trying to make a decision like this, first thing you need to do is it's what I tell my people all the times. You need to bloom where the Lord is you planted right now. You're in a position where God's ultimately sovereign. He's in control. You're still responsible for your decisions, but the position you're in right now, you make the most of that until He opens a door for something else.
That's good. That's good. That's the hard part a lot of times.
Tell me about it. Yeah.
Because once you see where you're supposed to go, and you get that vision, and it seems like there's always, God allows you to see it before you get there sometimes. And not necessarily, maybe you can't see the next step, but you can see, the dream, and
Right.
there's that growth and that patience that has to be developed along the way. And that's when if you're not careful, you turn off the path, or you get distracted, or can really.
Discouraged. Sometimes get discouraged and give
Yeah.
up.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let me ask you about that, because people may not realize, a lot of times people are always surprised when they get into ministry. They think that, you're dealing with godly people. So it's just, a great, what do you do? First of all, you work for the church. But what people don't realize is people bring their peopleness everywhere they go. So, you're dealing with people. We're all people. And there's a lot of hurt I think in ministry, because you're dealing with people, dealing with hurting people. There's a spiritual battle going on as well. All of that. I mean, how have you learned to you deal with that? You've been in there for what, 15 years, in ministry over 20 years. So how have you dealt without becoming bitter or cynical? I remember, Steve, doing, I think I was like a youth volunteer or something, and I was at a youth camp, and there were four pastors, and they were standing there kind of up on a little balcony looking over the whole camp, and I was standing just listening to them. And all four of them were so negative and cynical about ministry. And I remember thinking first, how sad it was and how I didn't want to be that or become that. I had no idea, though, how easily it would be if I weren't intentional to become exactly what they were, that's the natural bent because of the relational pain of ministry. So how have you dealt with it?
I've had a number of situations that I've had to deal with both back when I was a music and youth and even obviously as a pastor. And Troy, it just has to be, for me, it was just a conscious decision that I know I'm not supposed to hold on to bitterness. I know that the Lord would have me forgive and move on. And it was just a conscious decision. I'm going to do that. And then after that, when the times when my flesh would rise up and want to be angry and bitter after that, it was just another conscious decision. I just cannot do that. The Lord would not have me do that. And that, I mean, that's the way I approached it. I don't know if there's any other way, but for me, it just had to be, I am not going to be bitter. And, I don't want to have that type of attitude. I mean, this is Troy, I couldn't even count how many jobs I've had. And this is the best, greatest position I've ever had in my life. I get to study the Word of God, I get to learn, and then I get to turn around and speak to God's people from God's Word and help them navigate this life. And so why would I be bitter? You know
Right.
what I'm saying? Just because, like you said, the person has brought his peopleness into my office and spent an hour dressing me down because I said something in a sermon that he didn't like and he thought it was pointed at him, you know? And I sit there trying to have a smile on my face and say, I understand you, brother. If I offended you unnecessarily, but then when it's over, I'm like, I cannot hold a grudge
Mm,
against him. He's my brother in Christ. I've got to let the Lord have it. And if that rises up again, I just have to say, I'm not going to be bitter.
wow. No, that's such good advice because it'll destroy you, and
Yeah.
rob you of joy. And like you said, my experience as well, you just have to be, we like to feel stuff, but there's some things in life you just have to make a decision about, and be intentional, like you said. Let me ask you, let's say this is, I don't know when folks are listening or watching, but it's 2025 when we're talking. So we're 5 years away from COVID. But, anybody that lived through that, that's a huge, something that I would have never dreamed could happen, that the world would shut down. What was, as a leader and a husband and a a teaching pastor. How did you process that? How did you um, work through that?
Next question. Troy, I honestly, that was looking back. There are aspects of that I'm ashamed of myself, to be honest with you. Um, I, I, I'm kind of a homebody. So when I leave the office, I go home, I work out in my garage. So I go home, work out, and then Cheryl and I will have dinner and we'll watch a show or, do a Bible study or whatever we do. And honestly, we spent probably a month, I guess, meeting virtually online. And I just didn't mind. I didn't mind sitting at home and just, and looking back, I think that was the worst attitude I could have had. Well, I'm sure I could have had a worse attitude, but that was just wrong. Um, And we bounced back fairly quickly. I mean, we're a small congregation, but we did bounce back pretty quickly after that. But honestly, I was at the time one of five elders in the church, and we all had equal voice when it came to making those decisions. But on my part, I feel I should have pushed harder for us to join back together sooner. And we did probably sooner than a lot of churches did. But like I said, I did I didn't mind staying home, and I just feel so terrible about that now looking back. But anyway, I don't know if that answers your question, but yeah.
No, that's good. I mean, we all. I mean, it was to me just such a surprise
Oh
that
yeah,
it. How do you deal with that? How do you lead through that? How do you keep people connected? So as especially when when are we going to get back together? And then and then it was just and continues to be for me just filled with disappointment. You know what I'm saying? In the sense that I remember our first meeting, and you're thinking everybody's going to come back, and there's nobody there, and then the politics, it all became, I will say this, I don't remember in my lifetime anything dividing the church about things that we agreed on. In other words, everybody agrees racism is bad, but yet it divided the church, right? Everybody agreed COVID was bad, but it divided the church. I mean, everything became so political, and the enemy just did such a good job of dividing churches. And for me, it
yeah,
was challenging to lead through.
yeah, yeah. And we, yeah. I mean, I don't even know what to say. We had, yeah, it was awful. It really was, and it was frustrating because Cheryl and I aren't ones to sit back and just listen to what the news says and take it at face value. We
Right.
did our own research, and we have friends who are in the medical field, and we have other friends who wear tinfoil hats. And so, uh, we came to our own conclusions, and the whole situation angered us in many ways because of the way Walmart could be open, but the church has to be closed. The
Yeah.
bar can be open and the strip joint, but the church has to be closed, and that kind of stuff. And I'm thinking, this is exactly what the enemy, he's probably sitting back laughing his rear end off at all of this. And then you have pastors who are telling you, well, if you really love your neighbor, you're going to get the jab or you're going to do this and that. And I'm thinking, man, you just need to sit down and shut up. You don't, anyway. So that's where, as you can see, my flesh rises up somewhat when we start talking about this. So, um,
Well, let me ask you one last question that has
okay.
that well, it's in this same vein, but I think any leader has to deal with it, but especially anybody that happens to be a leader in a church is you told me before we got started that of course you're in Texas, which is a red state, and you said you were in Lubbock, which is a red city. But how have you had to deal, or how have you dealt with, our world is, when you and I were in college, I mean, it wasn't, I mean, you had to intentionally try to figure out what was going on politically in the world. Where today, politics is everywhere, and it's, everybody's watching. It's almost like it's a sport. Have you had to deal with that within your leadership and ministry there, or how have you dealt with it?
Yeah, I had some confrontations over the legitimate role of government, a legitimate role of authority, and actually someone very close to me. We had a parting of ways basically, because I'm trying to figure out how to answer without being too specific, because I don't want to throw anybody under the bus. Um, um, we had a disagreement over Romans 13. Um, because they were saying, well, Romans 13 says that we have to submit to the government for whatever they say.
Mm.
And I'm like, have you read it? Because that's not at all what it says. All Romans 13 is saying is Paul is laying out the what God ordained authority is for. And it's very clear. God ordained authority is to punish evil and reward good. And it's not, when it comes to the government, the person is not the authority.
Mm,
There's an authority behind that position. So, for instance, in the federal government, what is the authority? Is the president, is the Congress, is the judiciary, or is it something else? And of course, you're a history major, right? The authority is the Constitution, not the person. The authority behind the position
mm,
is the Constitution. And so when a person steps across the boundaries of what their a limited authority is, then Daniel says, "I'm going to pray,"
mm,
or Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego say, "We're not going to bow," or Peter and John say, "You can say what you want to, but we have to obey God rather than men." And so I had to fight. Again, how to say it without being too specific. I had a meeting with several men, and it was basically me against all of them.
mm.
One gentleman said, "Well, if the governor wants to come and take my truck, I have to give it to him." And I'm like, "What world are you living in? This is not communist Russia." Um, and so, yeah, but over time, the Lord, again, it's a work of the Lord. Over time, the things just got kind of smoothed out.
Right.
Um, I don't know, this gentleman I was speaking of, he eventually left the church. So I don't know if he's changed his mind on that, but I highly doubt it. But I haven't changed my mind either. So
No, I mean that, and, and that's the challenge. I mean, and it was just such. I think with all the stress people were feeling, and all the, and the media, social media just plays up all of that, and people were glued to it, and it became quite contentious, and for me, it's always, there's, like you say, there's certain things that are just scriptural, and I'm gonna, I mean, that's my only authority. So if I'm gonna drift from that, I'm in the wrong business. I feel like, so it was challenging, and for us, we new people came, but a lot of people that were here previously. Of course, South Florida. I live in South Florida, so people come and go all the time. They go to North Carolina. I'm not a big fan of North Carolina because we'll at least see somebody come to Christ, and they'll, grow in their faith, and sometimes even go on staff, and then they end up going to North Carolina or Nashville.
why North Carolina?
I don't know, but I promise you, we have had hundreds of people go to North Carolina from South Florida. They come from New York to South Florida to go to North Carolina.
Ridiculous. Well, my goal in life is to live in Florida one day.
There
So
you go. Well, here's the thing. There are lots of opportunities. Just either bring a tent or lots of money.
well, I don't have lots of money, and I'm not sure I could live in a tent, but
Well, you can come stay with us. How about that?
all
There you
right.
go. We'll just have a big compound.
Okay.
Hey, it
Oh,
is
Bill,
great to talk with you, man.
you brother.
Good to see you. Excited about all that you're doing. Thankful for the impact that you're having. And tell your beloved I said hello.
I will do that. Yeah.
And if you ever want to come down this way, have you ever been to South Florida?
Orlando's as far as I've been.
Uh,
Yeah, I'll just leave that.
yeah, Orlando. See, here's the thing. Orlando North is still, yeah, still the Bible Belt. It's still, but if you keep going south, you actually end up in the north.
I understand.
It's
Yeah.
much more New Jersey, New York, and then, we have a lot, of course, South America and Central America. So it's a fun place. I love the culture. Just lots of people from lots of different places and lots to do. But the thing, and you probably experienced that in Lubbock as well, but growing from a small town in Arkansas to here is nobody really cares here. You know what I'm saying? If you're having trouble with something and you pick up the phone and you're like, hey, my water this or they don't know you, so they don't care.
Well, yeah, I'm not so sure it's a whole lot different than Lubbock, but
Oh, me,
hey,
but
can I plug something real quick?
sure, of course.
I work with a new school, Agathon University of Applied Faith. It's
All right.
located in Fort Walton Beach.
Oh, wow.
So right now it's agathonu.com. We're working on getting our accreditation.
Great.
So if anybody listening is interested in a good theological and education, we offer education degrees and theological degrees. So if anybody's interested, Agathon University of Applied Faith.
That spell it for us.
Agathon's a Greek word for good, and it's Agathon.
There you go.
Athon.
And
Yeah.
if people want to follow you, are you on social media, or how can they connect with you or your teaching?
I do have a website, stevespurling.com, and I have not written anything in years, to be honest with you, Troy. I don't write unless I have something to say, and sometimes I don't have anything to say. So, and then there's also cornerstonebible.net
Okay.
is our church website, and all of my sermons are on there. And if you have a hard time sleeping, put one of those things on, you'll go right to sleep. My people do. So,
So let me ask you this. I got to go. But what is the best one? If I'm
Best
going to, your best sermon, if I'm going to go and I've only got a certain amount of time, which is the one I got to listen to?
2 weeks ago, preaching through the book of John. So we dealt with John chapter 7. No, 3 weeks ago, John chapter 6, and I can't remember which verses, but and I have no idea if that's my best one, but I'm just giving you one. So,
Well, we'll check. Hey, in the comments, if you happen to go and listen, let us know. We'll take a running tally and see how it goes. Steve, it's great to have you. Thanks for hanging out with us.
hey man, it's great to see you, and proud of you. Really am.
I appreciate that.
Not many people know you used to be my pastor. And you wanted me to come do the music for you, and I didn't. And that was the dumbest move in my life. But anyway.
Oh, how time flies, for sure. Hey, guys, well, I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Always incredible to hang out. There's lots of archived content, so check it out. Hey, and if you heard Steve say something that spoke to your heart, there's always lots of folks that we know that are trying to figure out what their next move is or how to get the most out of their life. Hey, why don't you share it with them? I'm sure it'll make a difference and help them along their journey, and that's our heart. Hey, on Sunday nights, we also do a live stream, just kind of hang out, have a little bit of fun, and goof around a little bit. I'm so glad you decided to check in on us, and we're here every Thursday. Hey, God bless, and we'll catch you next time right here on the Troy Gramling Podcast. Wait, before you go, if you're enjoying our content, check out this interview or this one here. They're both really good. And don't forget, subscribe. It's really important. We'll see you next time.